to Season 2, Episode 14 of the Bithell Games Podcast. I'm Alexander Slawinski.
And I'm Mike Bithell.
Each week we talk games, what it's like to make games, and the random stuff we don't generally find time to talk about because we are playing and or making games. Show note, please pardon my voice this week. I have no idea what's going on. It apparently late life allergies.
It's a bit gravelly. It's gravelly. It's working for you. It's working for you.
Yeah, I feel like it could be in Are we making any noir games where I could be a lounge singer?
You got that kind of, that Rorschach. No.
Now I'm trying to, I could sing like My Funny Valentine, like Matt Damon, Townsend Mr. Ripley style. That sounds really good. Anyway, thanks for all of your new reader mail. Keep it coming. contact@bithellgames.com. That's contact@bithellgames.com. Mike, what are you playing?
I've got a couple of games this week. So let me start with one, both PlayStation, and one I really like and one I really don't like. So let's go with the one I really don't like first. PaRappa the Rapper Remastered.
Blasphemy? Blasphemy, right?
I'd like to suggest a name change. I want to call it PaRappa the Rapper Remastered ? So PaRappa the Rapper, for people who don't know,
Hashtag blasphemy. Hashtag ruining childhood.
It's a fun game from your childhood, right? Like, it's a game, it's an old PlayStation mascot. It was a rhythm action music game before Guitar Hero, I think, before any of the kind of, there were some dance games that were using that in the arcades. It was one of the first. It was
before Guitaru Man as well, which was
one of the very, which was the originator of the Guitar Hero style thing. So like, it's very early, and basically you would play the game. Character it was a call and response rap. The other character would say something, would do a fun rap, and then you would kind of hit your controller buttons in sequence to match up and deliver the response. And it was always a bit janky. Like, part of the fun of it was the graphics were really weird. The button inputs didn't necessarily perfectly sync up, so you kind of, often it was chance whether you'd actually hit the beat or not. So it was kind of never perfect. But what I'm really disappointed with was the remaster. It's not a remaster on a lot of levels. They've taken the actual levels themselves and they've up-res those. Those are rendering in HD, with kind of, newly made 2D artwork that's, cleaner. We mentioned that Flash look, I think, on the last episode. This very much that kind of 2D art look. Those work. The cutscenes aren't. The cutscenes are still running in their standard definition and pixel size. So they run in like a little window on the screen, which, honestly, on booting up the game for the first time, I as a developer who knows how much one lies during pre-rendered cutscenes, I get it. Like, I wasn't that bothered by it, because it's like, no, that would have been a real pain to go back and do all the cutscenes in HD. I can understand why that was the case. Where it bothers me is the menus are in standard def. So, literally, the start new game screen is a standard def, which
that's the thing that drove me nuts on Wii games, because you would be playing a Wii game on an HD television, because everyone had HD televisions by that point, but like Wii games had that like fuzzy look to them, and it made it feel like if you're a person who has like 20/20 vision, it made you feel like there was something wrong with your eyes.
It's worse than that, though, for me with this one, because this isn't. I'm maybe not explaining myself well enough. This isn't that it's kind of blurry and scaled up. This is that I look at I don't know how big my TV is. Let's say 40-inch for argument's sake. I look at my 40-inch TV.
Let's say 60-inch for true's sake.
I don't need to boast on podcasts about how big my telly is. But I look at the screen, and the menu is about a 20 to 30 inch image in the middle of my screen with a admittedly on brand background around it. So the menu is a small subscreen, because they've not even like just scaled it up and blurred it. It's just a standard def TV screen in terms of pixel count in the middle of my screen. Does that make sense?
That sounds really
with just an enormous letterbox around it, effectively. And that's everything: the menus, the cutscenes, everything that isn't core gameplay loop. And what's really interesting, what it does is it highlights to you how little of PaRappa the Rapper you're actually playing for, because the charm of PaRappa the Rapper is those silly cutscenes and is the menu transitions and all this stuff, which is all running on that kind of mini screen. And I would have been fine with it if it were sold as such, but the fact that it's a remastering, to me, the first kind of the core, easiest, most important job on remastering something is making the menus run at 1080p. I don't understand, unless there is a massive technical hurdle that I'm ignorant of, which is possible. The cutscenes I could have forgiven. Cutscenes, sure, that's challenging, but the save menu should probably be updated to work on my TV. Like, that's what to me a remastering would mean, that, you know. But yeah, still a fun game, still weird, but I was disappointed that they didn't kind of do a bit more with the remaster. They
didn't remaster enough. Is how you're.
It was semi remastered.
It was yeah. Semi mastered.
What are you playing?
I have been going just back to the standards. I've been playing Battlefield, been playing Zelda, and then spontaneously my PC resurrected itself 2 days ago.
Oh, so, wow.
I have this weird thing. I just unplugged, like, after it died and it just wouldn't work anymore, I just unplugged it, and every so often would just plug it back in and hit the power button to see if it would fix itself. And 2 days ago it did.
Okay.
So I'm looking forward to, I don't know, some City Skylines, maybe some Civilization, something PC, a PC game. That's what I'm looking. That's what I'm looking to. Maybe play the Overwatches. Overwatch has a thing going on right now, right?
Overwatch always has a thing going on right now.
but it's
that's kind of Overwatch's entire business model, is to have a thing going on right now at all times.
But I think it's got a special thing going on right now.
I saw they were doing a promotion with another game where you could unlock a Diva skin. I remember that being a thing.
What was the other game you were playing?
The other game. You know, I've had a PlayStation VR in a box since launch. One of the things about making games, obviously for launch platforms, and it's happened a couple times now, is you obviously you're working on the platform day in, day out, and often by the time the actual thing is launched, you're not playing it, because you've just been making your game on it for so long that you just don't want to put the bloody headset back on, in this case. And it's
Mike, I've seen GDC talk after GDC talk after GDC talk telling me that I should be making the game that I want to be playing forever and ever after.
Those people don't tend to ship games. Once you've shipped a game, that's often a very stressful process, and yeah, you just want to get away from it. So obviously I've not played Volume VR since launch, but I hadn't played PlayStation VR yet. Despite having a PlayStation VR, you know, a release one and a couple of games, I just never got round to plugging it in. And I was in a strop yesterday, so I was like, screw it, I'm going to open the PlayStation VR. And I did, and I played Battlezone, which is the one that I remember being most impressed by at events. And I bought the Batman game for it because I like Batman, and it seemed like a nice opportunity to see some production value. And you know what? Both of them are great. Like, really great. And it was one genuinely surprising to me. So Battlezone, I'd played before, so I knew what that gameplay loop was. I didn't know about its meta structure. It's got a really nice kind of hex-based, procedurally generated meta level where you're kind of choosing your route towards the bad guys, avoiding stuff, getting stuff. Like, it's actually a really interesting tactical layer that I wasn't aware of. And the Batman VR game is just a really solid, fun 2 hours of pretending to be Batman in VR, and actually genuinely well made and interesting. So that was the thing for me, was just you know, finally, you know, months after launch, playing PlayStation VR and genuinely being massively impressed by everyone else's games for it. So that was fun. That was nice. And yeah, Batman VR. If you've kind of ignored if you've got PlayStation VR but you didn't get Batman because you heard it was short, it is short. It's about an hour and a half to 2 hours. But it's fun, and if you see it, at a price that makes sense for you, do pick it up, because I've genuinely been really impressed. And technically, visually, there are scenes where you're talking to human characters, and there are moments where they look too real, and you're like, I'm actually talking to. It's specifically, there's a scene with Robin where I started reading his body language like I would a human character, and it was a fantastic moment that I've not had in VR for a while, of just being genuinely like, how the hell did they get this right? So yeah, really good.
That's what I could do with this voice. I could be Batman.
Oh, the first time, so they're
Batman.
So they do. Well, that's it. You would be perfect for it. But they absolutely milk that Batman kind of fantasy. They get you to put the costume on piece by piece, and then they show you a mirror, and it's them. They're doing some very rudimentary mocap, so you can kind of wave to yourself in the mirror. You can kind of grimace at the camera and look at your Batman face, and it's great. They even, and this is spoilers for the first 2 minutes of the game, but the game opens with you. And I don't know if how familiar you are with Batman. Do you know the backstory about his parents? What happened to his parents?
Are you kidding me?
Has that come up? Have you ever seen that in a movie, TV show, or video game?
I don't know. I remember something about pearls.
Something about pearls, right? So, but you know what? They open with that, and of course you're playing Bruce, so you're a kid. So all the humans are all massive, and you're in the shoes of a child watching this. Spoilers: bad things happen that may ruin your life and drive you to a life of pretending to be a bat. But just something like that, just something as silly as just making me a kid for a little while, and these enormous parents kind of, it was really, they were using the VR in an interesting way.
That's a bit traumatizing as well, isn't it?
It is weird watching your mum get shot in VR, I'll be honest with you. But I didn't notice that there was reference to the pearls. But I did not see what happened to them in the kerfuffle. But just daft stuff, like genuinely one of the bits I enjoyed most was they do the crime scene investigation thing that's in the main Arkham games, where you're kind of replaying a sequence back and forth, and you've got you've got a controller where you're turning your hand in order to fast forward and rewind time, kind of like Doctor Strange. And you're playing this, and you're watching a fight sequence. Basically, you're stood watching two characters kicking the crap out of each other, and you can fast forward it, rewind it, and you're trying to spot moments in the fight that will give you clues or whatever. And it's great. And I must admit, I played it through in one standing, because of course you're playing those games stood up, in about 2 hours, and immediately wanted more. Like I would genuinely go out and buy a 10-hour version of that game. I'm tempted to just play it through again, because I genuinely had a really, just the stage setting in that, just the tone of the whole experience was just genuinely really fun. And, with the Move controllers and everything, just a really great experience. Genuinely surprised by that one. You have to play it when you come over.
I'm Batman. And now it's time for what's going on at the studio, and what's going on is as our prototype discussion conversations keep moving forward, your little project keeps chugging along. It's
coming along, isn't it?
There's an art style starting to be produced or explored here. Mm-hmm. Like, it's a thing.
It is a thing. I hope the game's good. It's kind of on me now, because it definitely looks good. The artists are all kind of spinning up, and Daz is joining. Well, by the time people hear this, Daz will already have joined to lock some stuff in, and 3D modeling and all. There's lots of stuff going on, and animator. We've got to get an animator sometime soon as well. It is spinning up. And
how do you feel about it? Like, is it still an R&D thing for you, or like has it transitioned to like this is a thing? Like, we haven't made the conscious decision of like whether to actually like put this out there hasn't been made yet, but like,
I think I've made that decision internally. Like in my head. I mean, let me put that a different way, obviously, because listeners to the show should know that obviously Alexander is a partner in the company and therefore gets to make major choices with me. However, we're doing this, I think. No, for me, I'm treating it that way. I'm treating it as a product. I think for me, that's the only way to do it. It's hit a point where I need to start thinking about it as something that players are going to play, rather than as like in terms of the R&D objectives. And people are going to understand when they, hopefully, if we do bring it out, when they see it, there were R&D objectives to it. And I think for me, those objectives have been met. I've certainly there are things we're doing in this game that I think we'll probably do in future games. Like there's lessons that have been learned, but in terms of now going forward with it, I have to go into game design brain and actually be trying to make something for people to experience and enjoy. So I'm thinking of it as a game now rather than R&D. Whether or not we actually choose to release it is, yeah, as you say, still on the cards. But in terms of how I have to think about it now, yeah, it's a game now. It's now an experience I'm creating for people.
So I have to start getting all that back end paperwork going, don't I?
But you know what? It could still be something we've canned projects before. Could be something. So anyone listening to this, please don't get excited. we might well. We're at a stage nearly where I think it's going to be where we're going to have vertical slice is the wrong word, but something that we can actually.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because certainly for some of our younger listeners out there, I don't think there's been a solid example of this in quite some time, but there's a pretty decent history, certainly at a completely different scale, mind you. Like before I go into any of this, at completely different scale. But I mean, Blizzard has been known to like squash a project like before, like very, very close to, completion, or what is considered to be completion. There was a StarCraft, it was called StarCraft Ghost. It starred Nova, who then eventually shows up in StarCraft 2. Mm-hmm. I mean, one of the first E3s I ever went to was a third-person shooter. It was you played as Nova the Ghost, and it was a stealth third-person stealth action game.
It looked good, and it was being well sold. I know, because I was back then just starting my career, and I was a consumer, and I was looking forward to that game.
And so and then it just poof, gone. And even before that, there was another example. Warcraft Chronicles. Oh, I really should have looked this up before I said it. But there was a Warcraft game that had this cell animation cutscenes to it or something like that. But it was a very different style project, and that got that was in promotional materials. It was when you bought games in boxes, there was advertising material in there for that Warcraft game. So there is definitely a long history in this industry of things getting really, really potentially far and then just disappearing, or being canned somewhere and then resurrected elsewhere. I think for us, we're in a really lucky position where so far we've not released a bad game, and I say that without ego. That's just in terms of our Metacritic, our user reviews, whatever. We have hit a level, and that's great. The more you do that, though, the more pressure there is to not ever slip up, because obviously that would be a problem. I think for me, I just want to make sure we maintain that quality. I want to make sure that people know that a game from us, it might not be to your tastes, but it's not going to be objectively bad. We'll continue to experiment with this. I think it's good. But I'm very aware as well that I've not done the kind of the play testing, the asking around, all of the stuff that I generally try and do before I decide whether something is actually good. Often something's bad without anyone else looking at it, but you can also often look at something you're making and think it's the best thing ever, and then show it to people and get complete apathy. Once we're at the stage for me where I'm comfortable showing it to kind of friends and colleagues and getting some opinions, that's when I'll know if we're going to release it or not. But yeah, it's an interesting thing as all this other stuff is going on that it's an idle hands project. That
it really is. It's just to keep us occupied, really.
Yeah. Because I promise you, if you ever have to go through this experience that we're going through, it is long. It is long.
Getting a bigger project kind of off the ground. Yeah, it has been a slog.
It's long. There's the approvals. There's more approvals.
It's worth saying that we're in a very lucky position, obviously, because we've had a few games that have done well enough that we do have reserves. If you're an indie developer who wants to make a bigger project or wants to do stuff with publishers or platform holders or whatever, these kind of bigger companies that take a long time to do stuff, make sure you have the time to do so. Make sure that you have either that you start that conversation when you're still finishing the previous game, or that you have, you know, the money in the bank to be able to sustain your company while that stuff's going, because there's definitely a scenario here where if we didn't have the resources we have, I would be getting very worried about money right now, because it has been a long process. Anyone who's listening to podcasts we've been talking vaguely about the same thing now for quite some time. That should give an idea of how long it's taking.
Yeah, no, it realistically, if I were to be, you know, talking to someone else down at the pub, I would definitely be telling them like at least 6 to 8 months of reserves, like to get through any type
to go through the kind of process we're going through right now. Yeah. We're lucky we have that, and also we have some amazingly talented people we work with that we can actually like use those months to make something, which is what we're trying to do. But yeah, it's a big ask.
I wanna thank you for reading the Freedom Mail again. Thank you for reading the Freedom Mail again.
Hello, Mike and Alex. Ew.
You don't like being called Alex.
No.
But let's not hold that against the author of this. Thank you so much to whoever wrote to us. It's really great of you to write into the show. Okay,
at least I'm not a parenthetical, right? Like, that's...
You'll always be a parenthetical to me, Alexander.
Oh, I wrote in several months ago concerning my ambitions to work in the video games industry and about working on my own game in my spare time as a resume portfolio piece. Since then, I found myself with far less of said, quote, spare time, having accepted a permanent full-time graphic design position, which is not at a game studio. College loans, unfortunately, don't wait for dream jobs. Amen. Due to the mental fatigue of the full-time creative job, I'm now finding it difficult to be productive on my own personal project, especially since I'm still a novice coder and often have to work through programming problems in addition to game design ones. Considering the development of Thomas Was Alone, I thought this would be a good place to request advice on managing this kind of off-hours productivity. Thanks, Josh. P.S. Mike, you were right. The Lego Architecture Studio is great! ! I really enjoyed digging back into my childhood passion this past weekend.
Well, I'm now offended because for me, I never stopped playing with Lego, so I now feel childish. But it's a good question. A tough situation. Like I often, whenever I get asked about Thomas Was Alone, how do we emulate doing Thomas Was Alone? I genuinely often tell people just don't. Because it was hard, and it's that class. It's something that you get a lot as a developer. You know, people want your tips, and honestly, often the truth of these stories is it wasn't fun, and you want to recommend people doing it because you want them to have the same opportunity you did and try for something, but also you know how wrong it could have gone. I was with Thomas Was Alone. It was partially helped by the fact that my girlfriend was working away for 6 months. That made it a lot easier. I had a lot more free time. I also, I frankly gave up on having a social life for about 6 months to get, at the peak of that project to get it done. So it's not necessarily a healthy way to make a video game, is what I'm saying. But what I would say is work out. Treat it as a hobby. That would be my suggestion. Is work out how much time you want to devote to, going fishing or taking up archery. I don't know why I'm thinking of like hunting. Clearly there's I've been playing too much Horizon, I think. Treat it like a hobby, find an hour or two a week in the evenings to do stuff on it. Maybe, give yourself half a day or a day each weekend to play with stuff. I think that's a more balanced way of doing it. In terms of making a full game and releasing it, it would take a long time if you did it that way. But I think, if you are looking to kind of get your dream job, maybe do treat this as a portfolio piece. Make an amazing graphic design led thing, which isn't, a full on game you could sell for $10 on Steam. A lot of people, create portfolio work in their spare time, that's enough. Make free games and put them on itch.io, things like that, where you can kind of showcase your skill and find opportunities. I'd also say that where possible.
Can you take a second to explain what itch.io is?
Itch.io is a very cool sales platform for games, but they're very, very good at free games as well. A lot of people who make free and experimental games use itch.io and use that that content delivery system essentially that you have with a platform that sells games. They use it for free and they put stuff out there, and it seems to be a favorite among people who do that kind of content. And then if you do want to sell stuff, itch.io has a very nice scheme in place for how you choose how much money itch.io gets, things like that. They're good people, and it's just an easy platform to get your game onto, and one that I think the audience also understands that stuff on there is going to be more experimental maybe, and kind of is a bit more accepting of that than other platforms. So I wonder if that's a better approach. I think you could seriously stress yourself out, and frankly, you're starting a career. You're starting, you've got a new job. You've got, a life getting started. You're very young, presumably, or at least in terms of career terms, you're probably your career is young. You're starting, your first job. There'll be time, and you'll find a point in your life maybe where you're more comfortable and you have a bit more time to do work, or where you've got an opportunity. I didn't start making Thomas Was Alone the second I left university. The second I left university, I went and got jobs, and it was only after years of doing those jobs and being frustrated and a bit bored at work, making games in my own time was a release. It was something I could do as a fun hobby, and I got very lucky that something kind of did well. What do you reckon, Alexander?
Yeah, I mean, you went off, made Thomas Was Alone. I went off and went back to school. I mean, there's the same sort of, you have to make a conscious chunk, like a conscious decision to take a chunk of your life and devote it to doing this other thing, which means, yes, you don't get to go out with friends every single, like for me, I had class, and then I had homework, and it's devoting a section of your time,
which takes great discipline, but it also, it does, something's got to give, right, in those situations, and that's there's lots for every story of Thomas Was Alone. There's a lot of games that didn't do well. There's a lot of games that did do well, but the people who made them, like broke up with their girlfriend or their husband, or had problems in their personal life.
Or the game did well, but there's so many people at the table that splitting up whatever revenues there was from the project doesn't, it's not really
life changing in that sense.
It doesn't change anything.
So it's tricky.
Yeah, when we talk about this stuff, it isn't just a creative decision; it's a financial decision as well, and hopefully that comes across when we talk about it.
Yeah, and I don't want it to read either like we're trying to dissuade everyone. I've been accused of that a few times, of people saying, well, of course you don't want anyone else to jump in because then more competition. That stuff. I'd love everyone to be able to jump in, but I think it's important to be honest about what the risks are and what the it's not fun. Like it's really tough to make a video game and release it. It is fun because obviously you're making video games, which is awesome. But there are these challenges to it, and I think being straightforward about what those challenges are hopefully makes it easier to kind of overcome them.
Yeah, I don't like you don't like competition. That's the one that bothers me the most, because we actually want competition. That's competition elevates things. It's race to the bottom we don't want. Like, that's the thing that hurts everybody, especially since it's monopolistic. But whatever, there's a whole other conversation for a whole other time. But
I feel we've moved beyond the scope of the email.
We have, but yes, Josh, it's a balance, and it's cutting out that time and making that. Honestly, it's also like it's like going to the gym too. Right? You have to consciously make that time effort. And then once you're doing it for a month or two, it just becomes natural. Like I remember trying to get back into school, and it was, trying to shift your brain back to that was, you remember all the reasons why you hated school in the first place. And then the dreams come of, forgetting to study for certain things, or, you're in class and the test is put in front of you, but you haven't been in class all semester and suddenly you have to take this thing, or, stuff like that. And then when school was over, still had those dreams, still panicked that I hadn't done certain pieces of work, because you've carved out a section of your life for this thing, and now it's over and your brain is still kind of scrambling for it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's making that, carving out that section of your life for this thing. If you have a burning question about games, game development, or just about the complexities of the universe, you can send those questions to us via contact@BithelGames.com. That's contact@BithelGames.com, through the YouTube comments of this show, or on Twitter by pinging @MikeBithell or @Slewinski. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Bithell Games Podcast. We can always use your support, so please provide reviews and 5 stars on iTunes, likes and subscribes on YouTube, and positive. Actually, thank you to all the YouTube comments lately. Really nice. There's been some.
Few people watch it on YouTube, don't they?
It's surprising. Like there's it's
watch,
right?
Listen, right?
Listen, yeah. No, and well, there's a possibility there, but that's a conversation for another time. Anyway, positive reinforcement on whatever platforms you're hearing this show on whenever possible. This podcast was produced by Jonathan Downen. We'll be back next week. Just the two weeks until London time for me.
London time.
It's
my favorite make of fudge.
What?
There's no such make of fudge. It feels like it should be.
London time. Fudge.
Right?
Yeah.
I think that would work. Trademark it.
At least now we know if this video game thing doesn't work out. I always joked about the fish and chip shop. Maybe we just now open up a fudge shop. London time fudge.
It's London time with fudge.
We'll be back next week. I'm Alexander Slewinski. Thanks again, and get in the last word, Mike.
Rum and raisin.